So let's get into it.
Okay.
Uh, Olivia Jade, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. I'm so excited to hear everything you have to share with us about your beautiful divine encounters. Um, for context, Olivia Jade is my friend, my fellow quantum healer, my peer, and I know she's had so many incredible experiences, and I think it would be really inspiring to hear what she has to share with us today. So, Olivia, let's hear a little bit about you.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me, Passion. I always love connecting with you. It's been such a joy getting to grow with each other and practice our modality into our certification together. Oh my gosh, we've been on this journey. It's been so amazing in our healing journey. And so, yeah, I am Olivia Jade. I have been studying world religions for the past 6 years. And I guess I'll do a little outline into my life and where I've been. So, I grew up in a house that didn't push any particular religion in America. My mom's side is Roman Catholic, though, and my dad has a background in Catholicism, the Islamic faith, and Buddhism. And so from a very young age, I remember having spiritual experiences. I didn't know what they were at the time, but I am a born psychic medium. So at night, I would get visited by things, not only in my room, but also in my dreams. I'd wake up with night terrors. Like my mom has a lot of stories that she gracefully, fills me in on because I don't remember some of these experiences because I guess, my brain blocked it out or whatever. So it's really nice to have her as kind of like a reminder of some of the things I've seen. Um, I've always been connected to nature, been connected to the elements, and to animals. And not to be cliche or whatever, but I was genuinely an outcast, unfortunately, in school. And it's so weird because I always felt like I wasn't from here. Like I felt like, and I know that's a typical, common experience sometimes with people who are spiritually more in tune with their gifts from the beginning in this incarnate life, whatever you're meant to experience. And so it's so weird because the way that I would cope with the bullying is telling myself that, oh, the other kids don't like me because I have abilities. The other kids don't like me because they don't understand me. Like I would use that as a way to comfort myself, even though I had no mentors, I had no books, I had no way of actually knowing what paganism or spirituality was. I just had all of these innate understandings that I didn't have the terminology to describe, if that makes sense. And so I was actually like religion officially entered my life in middle school. I was baptized with my best friend at the time. We volunteered at our local Christian church together. And I was a devout Christian until the end of high school, where I don't know, I had this odd sort of awakening, like, or this realization, questioning, I guess, of this can't be all there is. For some
Mhm.
reason, I thought and I knew that something wasn't being said, something wasn't being talked about. And so, what's hard about that is that I started asking more questions in my, and of course, mind you, this isn't everybody's experience. A lot of people are beautifully fulfilled in their faith and they stick with that, and that's totally okay. I'm so happy that you have that. For me personally, I found that my leaders weren't very welcoming of my questions. They wouldn't really answer them. They would kind of like beat around the bush or whatever, and I'm like, so I was called to dig deeper, but I didn't want to be deemed evil, which is something that a lot of pagans I've talked to in my communities, both in person and online, have said, like, as you sort of deconstruct and move from Christianity to paganism specifically because of the history there, it's very intense. And so from there, I took a leap of faith. I started studying world religions, especially old world pagan beliefs. And so now, oh my goodness, 6 years later, I run an in-person metaphysical exploration group. I've been a part of many online circles. I have led a pagan ritual and I am a certified quantum Christic healer, as well as doing a number of ascensions for both human spirits and non-human entities. So that's a little bit about me.
Can I ask what were the specific questions that you were posing your leaders in your church that you were getting satisfying answers to?
So it first started off as, because the way that my church was structured was like we would have the service, we would have worship time with music and stuff, and then afterwards we would go to these like smaller groups. Um, and we had like journals where they would oftentimes like give us discussion questions to write about that pertained to like the service of that day, and then we would come back and they would have written comments in your notebook, like if you had any questions or reflections from like the service the week before, basically. And so I remember it's so hard. I think like it started off as the social stuff, you know, homophobia and me pushing back against it. And I will never
Oh
forget,
yeah.
there was literally one time where my leader, because I was asking, I was like, why did they talk about homosexuality in this way in the church service? Like, these are people, this is who they love. Like, God created all of us in perfection. Like, nothing is wrong about our creation, basically. And she literally wrote in my notebook, she said, oh, well, gayness comes from Pandora's box, and it is this force of evil that's been thrust upon us, and all of this very, oh. So I thought to myself, what? That just,
It would make
I
my
couldn't,
stomach sink. Yeah.
I know. I could not believe that she said that to me. Like, it was this whole paragraph too that she wrote in my notebook. And so that's where it started. That's where it started. I'm like, oh no. And that's when I sort of dove into more of these, like, yeah, just like bringing things up from the service of like, oh, why was this said this way? Oh, I personally think that God blah blah blah. And like they would just write back these things to me, and I'm like, oh no. So I stopped going.
Mhm.
And then that's when I, like I said, slowly started to explore what else was out there.
Yeah, you had to get out of there. I'm so
Ah!
glad that you did.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's just so sad to me. I'm like, oh man, like you guys preach about love and unity, but what it this doesn't sound like love and unity to me.
Yeah, it's such a block.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a wall to prevent empathy and understanding. Yeah, how painful. So even before, I mean, it's my understanding from conversation we've had before, I think, uh, you started having encounters like even before you were joining the church, and you were aware of mystery and experiencing otherworldly things all throughout your childhood. Um, what, yeah, what was that like? Was it something scary for you, or were you always open to it and receptive? Like, did it did it evolve? How did you grow up with that and come to reconcile it?
So I think a lot of it, it's so hard to put into words, but I'm very lucky to have had friends growing up. I didn't have very many of them, but I did have friends, and we all kind of felt this energy in a way. We
Mhm.
would express ourselves and like be outside with our bare feet for hours upon hours and like play around in our neighborhood, and even at school too, like my school friends, we would always play like imaginary games together where we would be like in these fantastical lands and in these, you know, other identities almost. And to me, I've sort of interpreted that almost as like obviously friends having fun together, but like we were actually practicing some very real pagan stuff. I mean, making potions in this like there was this tree at my elementary school, and the roots were so big that they came above ground, and they made like these little holes and like these little like bowls almost in the earth, and we would make potions in them with like leaves and mud and berries, and just the way that we would interact with the land was so ancient to me and innocent and beautiful. And like connecting with animals too. I mean, people's dogs and like cats just being so comfortable around us and us spending time with them outside, and just like, I don't know, it was like this deep understanding of like community and love and warmth. And I'm just like remembering, when it comes to pagan stuff specifically, I did have interactions with the fae for sure, fairies. Because I mean, like growing up as a little girl, sometimes you're like, ooh, fairies, ooh, mermaids, ooh, like princesses, you know, and that's all like ethereal
Yeah.
energy,
I
you
was
know.
dying
So
for an interaction with a fairy.
yeah, no, me too. And so, oh my gosh, this is actually a really nice story I want to like weave into this question.
Mhm.
Actually, is
Yeah.
there was this one time. This was years ago. I think I was 10 or 11. My grandparents and my aunt and uncle had gone to Italy because I'm half Italian. They went to Italy to take a little vacation, and they brought back these beautiful earrings for me. And actually, looking back, they are Christic colors in them. If you look in the sun, it's literally magenta and teal glitter in them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like what? So there were these beautiful earrings. I wore them, and all of a sudden one day, one of them disappeared. And I was so sad. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are earrings from Italy. My family got these for me. I'm so upset that I lost them. I had no idea what happened to it. And so one day, it was so weird. My mom was like cleaning the house, and I was like coming back up to my room from being somewhere. The earring I was missing was perfectly placed on my bed. It was just sitting there. And I'm like, and I'm like looking around, and I called out to my mom because she was cleaning. So my logical brain was like, oh, maybe she found it. So I asked her, I was like, Mom, did you find my earring? I've been missing this. And she's like, no, I don't know how that got there. I didn't do that. And I'm like, so in my mind, I don't know if you've seen like the Tinkerbell movies, but I do believe a fairy returned my earring to me, because that's actually a real thing. Like they do return lost items to humans. So I'm like, oh, isn't that so beautiful? I love that memory. So yeah, just the fact that I've had so many encounters in like both overt and covert ways growing up, both, you know, more life affirming and more life diminishing malevolent beings. Like I've had such a full spectrum experience from such a young age.
It's so cute to be able to recognize that too. I feel like part of my motivation with this podcast is how much goes unnoticed or like unseen when you're not knowing what is a connection or like what is a
Yes.
fairy supporting you, you know?
Yeah.
Like to be able to have more reference points and actually see in your life the ways in which you are supported in these incredible divine ways.
Yes.
Okay, well, I would love to hear more about the more overt experiences you've had. Maybe we could, yeah, go through like chronologically, or I guess maybe in intensity, or maybe it's the same order.
Yeah, I do have a little I have a couple of experiences in chronological order I would love to share with you.
Let's get into
Basically,
it. Yeah.
okay, okay, yay.
Sorry, I think the sun's coming after me. I'm gonna scoot back a little bit.
No, it looks so pretty on you, honestly. Mm. Um, yes. Um, so I remember there was a big turning point in my journey when because you and I share a mentor, and there was a time where I was working with her, and then we both sort of took a break almost from each other at the same time for a year and a half. And then when we came back together, I had a session with her to gain some clarity on like a really big arc that happened in my life and just recently ended. And so during this call, she told me about her revelations about like more aspects of the universe, like, you know, Crystalla, and like these parts of the divine collective that people don't talk about so much. That full spectrum, you know, multi-dimensional plane from the 3D, not only up until the 10D, like what I would say pop culture likes to acknowledge, but like the 15D, there's actually even more to discover, which is really cool.
Mhm.
And so she was telling me
Yeah.
about that.
I think the pop
And
culture gets stuck on 5D even. That's what I hear the most.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
5D, we're gonna make it to
5D.
5D. It's like, don't limit yourself.
Yeah, no, exactly. So she was like totally broadening my perspective, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I've never heard of this before. You know, that whole introduction into what you and I actively study now. So basically, in that, I did a little dedication to my soul heritage, and I remember having an experience at night a couple days after that, and I was falling asleep, and this is something called the the hypnagogic state, I believe. I scientifically call it the half asleep, half awake, but it has actual scientific terminology. I think it is like the hypnagogic or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but it's that like those very few moments where you're about to fall asleep, and so you are very, very prone to having spiritual experiences during, like, when your brain is in that state on a frequency and like a wave level. And so I was falling asleep, and all of a sudden I started hearing talking, like physically in my ears. It wasn't something I was tuning into intuitively. Like, it actually felt like there was an earbud in my ear, and I was like hearing somebody talking. And at first I thought it was our mentor. At first I thought it was our mentor's highest self. But then I realized like as she kept talking, it wasn't her voice, it was my highest self's voice. And so sometimes, and for the purpose of this podcast, some of you may heard of the concept of the higher self. Well, the highest self is the highest possible station of identity that your soul has. Ultimately, I guess it's like the whole or the full version of your soul. All your power, all your eternality is a divine being. Like, that's what that term means. And so I was hearing her talking, and she was basically talking about the way the cosmos work and like the universe, and I was so intrigued and I was so excited, and I wanted to hang on to her every word. I was trying very hard to stay conscious in this frequency. And then all of a sudden, what's so beautiful is that I heard her say, like, in the middle of her whole spiel, she stopped and she said, "You don't have to do anything. Just listen to my voice." And so I'm like, that really calmed me down and really helped me sort of like ground in the warmth that
Mm.
was this transmission and not try too hard with it. You know what I mean? And so from there, she said a couple more things and I fell asleep. So I'm like, oh, that was
What what
so
did she
cool. And I want
tell
to stop in
you?
between each of these stories to like get your thoughts or your comments if you like wanted to say anything.
Yeah, what did she tell you?
So, as you grow in your journey and in your abilities, practice, because that way you'll be able to retain more of what you hear. Because that's the thing about the hypnagogic state, is that I know what she said in my heart, and I have that more like higher dimensional, like inner standing of that. But trying to, and something that people in our community will understand too, is like
Mhm.
trying to put something into words physically like that is so difficult sometimes, like into English, into like concise 3D physical language. And so, I mean, it was oneness. It was like a continuous thread. It was the connection of all beings, and how like we can't ever mess anything up. Like, everything is divinely intended. We are all so guided and so protected. and basically saying how broad the universe is. Like multiverse theory is real, parallel timeline theory is real, like all of this stuff that everybody sometimes in the past have like dismissed as, you know, conspiracy or wishful thinking, especially when it comes to quantum physics. Like it's all real, it all exists. Like there's so much that cannot be quantified, and so to have that flow in as an energy really helps the heart understand. And with that, though, again, it's so hard to put into words. So, like, that's the best way that I can kind of describe that.
Just like the deepest knowing and reassurance you could possibly receive.
Basically.
Wow, I mean, that story in itself is so beautiful. Like that could be the whole podcast. That's literally like glowing me up right now.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy about that.
Okay, let's keep it rolling. Okay, so you got your divine message. You're equipped
Mhm.
now with the knowledge of the universe. What happens next?
I received all the answers. Okay, no. So, so this happened relatively recently. So, like, I would say maybe there's like a 2-year gap between that experience and this next one I'm going to describe. And I have had like more experiences in between that time. It's just like they were very specific and niche and like kind of private or whatever. Um for this next one, something that I'm going to try to describe in the most understandable way possible is that we all have a story that we signed up for in advance when coming into this physical incarnate life. And the relationships that we have in the collective space with everybody's highest selves united. In my like theory, like my little like personal opinion, there are little like sprinkles of like, ooh, I want you to be involved in this part of my life. Ooh, I want you to be involved in that. Like, ooh, I want this thing to happen or whatever. And it's kind of like this beautiful collaboration between you and other souls that share the same essence and oneness, because we all are one. And so just like different expressions of it, you know. And so I did some, I guess, like soulmate, Eros Gamos, divine union work the past couple years, most recent years. And there were sessions I used to have convening with the highest self of the person I'm meant to be with in this life. That concept in itself, like with our highest selves, we incarnate into different, separate physical lifetimes. But when we all ascend, because time is relative, we all come back into our whole highest self, our highest like divine existence. And so by connecting with him, to me, I am getting closer to the like whatever physical incarnate I am meant to be in union with physically here in this life. So with this, we've had like discussions together where like I would channel messages, or like we would go out and take a walk, or like just like cute little like visitation time, I guess. And so there was yeah, and so like there was this one morning where we were cuddling in bed together, and I started to fall asleep again because I woke up and then I snoozed my alarm and I was going to go back to sleep. And it was almost jarring the way that I physically heard in my ears a yawn sound. It was like a deep masculine sound, and it went, ooh, like a like I can't describe it any other way. But I was freaked out at first. I'm like, oh my god, what was that noise? And I'm like, oh wait, Eric's here with me. Like I heard him yawning, and that's so cute. Oh my god. So I think that's so interesting and so funny and cute that I experienced that.
Whoa. Did you say his name? You know his name already? Is that what you said?
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you repeat what you said?
Did you say Eric or did you say his specific name?
Yeah, Eric. So Eric spelled Aerike, but that's only a shortening of his full soul name. That's just like a way that's like pronounceable or whatever. Yeah, Eric.
Oh my gosh. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
It's gonna be so funny when you meet him and are like, "Oh, I know this little quirk of yours already." Like,
True. I know, yeah. Yeah, like to feel that match of essence energetically is going to be
Mhm.
mind-blowing. I'm so excited.
How can you how can you discern that it's I'm just wondering more about this process, like, how can you discern when it's your essence match or just another aspect of yourself that you're interacting with when you're taking these walks or having these mornings in bed?
So, in this physical form, I was born into a female body. And so I know what my essence in this life feels like, smells like, tastes like. There's actually an exercise that my new mentor took me through to identify all these things. And so it's like it's a counterpart energy. It's like he is the masculine to my feminine. It's like even though at the end of the day, like when you look at everything from like that higher perspective, we're all one and the same. In these forms, we are different expressions of the same thing. It's like the way that our mentor described it in like such a beautiful way is that we're all puzzle pieces with these different traits that fit into this picture. And
Yes.
so these talents, these gifts, these artistic creations, like however it might move through us in a both physical and metaphysical sense, they're collected into us and separated into us as, our physical incarnate lives. And then when we all ascend, it comes back into that full picture. So it's like pieces of the picture are in us. And so basically, with that discernment, I know that it's not me because I know what my essence feels like. And that essence that is next to me is like comparatively like I am, feminine and flowing and like strong and courageous and like, silly and goofy, like whatever traits sort of make up me as both a human and like a divine being living a human experience. For him, it's like there's like a personality to it. There's such a distinction to like his codes and the way that he is like presenting, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
just like the same way that you would discern yourself from another physical being, it is very much the same thing, except it's not physical, it's the energy. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I wonder if you'd be willing to share or open to share that little process of getting in touch with all of your own personal aspects.
Mm. So it's kind of like it's almost like a guided meditation in a way. Maybe I'll make a recording of it at some point, but you close your eyes and I wrote it down. I would love to make a recording of this actually so that you can have it and so that others can have it. But it's like a grounding process and then it's a tuning into where you feel your soul sits in your body. And to me, that was immediately like the heart of a FEMA core, which is something we talk about in our community, the core of your soul. And then it builds on the details. It's like, how does it move? How does it sound? How does it smell? How does it taste? And I believe the way that it looks is the last step. I could be mistaken, but it's like laid out in such like a guided, intentional way to where you slowly build upon this like this captured image, this feeling through all of the senses, basically. It's like a very deep incension in a very brief amount of time, I guess, is how I can describe it.
Okay, I think we would all love that recording. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now you have all the answers to the universe and you're connected to your soulmate. What happens next?
So, yeah, like this next story, this was a lot. This was this past October 2023. There was a night that I had that was particularly difficult. I was struggling emotionally and just kind of like laying awake in bed in the dark, like feeling all of this heaviness. And so basically, I was crying about being in separation with someone very important to me, like spiritually, deep stuff, whatever. Some of the shifts that were happening and like I needed to surrender to, that it was just like really hard to accept, right? And so that's something that a lot of us encounter in the spiritual journey, I think. And so it was so bad. It was so dense in my chest that it was like 10 p.m. My family was asleep. I went outside to my car because my car was parked outside. It was left in the driveway overnight. And I had to go out there to literally scream and like cry as hard as I needed to cry in that moment because I couldn't, be quiet in my room. And so I was screaming, I was crying, I was like releasing all these deep densities in a very like aggressive way because it like had to come out. And I got the most wild thing happened. I felt this energy because it was nighttime start to close in around me. There were entities and spirits of humans that were slowly making their way onto my property closer and closer to my car. And I got angry. I got so angry. I started like lashing out energetically. I was like, I am having an actual nervous breakdown right now. This is my space. This is my time. I was so angry that I was being invaded upon essentially when I was trying to like release some tension and some pent up emotions. And so in the midst of all my tears and the heaviness and me being so angry that I was like having these intrusive energies around me, it was so amazing how fast it shifted into a higher understanding of like, shoot, actually, wait, maybe what's around me is actually trying to help me. Maybe they're actually trying to support me and bear witness to the pain that I was experiencing. And so it's so wild. I had this what can I call it? Like a speech, like these words just started flowing through me so clearly and solidly, like words of like resilience and hope. And the way that it was a divine message. It was like I was letting the emotions talk and like trying to talk to the entities around me of like, you can be okay, because like I knew that they were there because they were trapped, and it's like because I felt like the darkness and like there was a group of humans on my lawn, and then there's a walkway that separates my house and my neighbor's house, and there were actually like more cryptid like entities over there because they probably weren't capable of getting closer. That's as close as they all got, like on my property and around my property. And so I was speaking from the heart and allowing these divine codes to flow through, translating the themes of the pain I was feeling into like this song of encouragement that sounds so cheesy and like weird, but I was so amazed at the end of this long, very deeply emotional spiel. I started seeing light, beams of light of, I think, 5 people on my lawn, like 5 humans ascending. From my speech alone, something in that resonated with them, and they literally were able to untether themselves from Earth and ascend to peace. And then for the cryptids, 2 of them fully ascended to peace, which is amazing because what cryptids are most of the time are like actual human souls that have a lot of like very scary monster like gunk put on top of them. And then they become siphons into things like fear and dread and things like that. And they can take on very like creepy animalistic forms. And so 2 of the cryptids ascended, and then 1 was actually, I could see its hand being taken by some kind of guide, and they disappeared so that that could be, healed further before like the ascension or whatever guidance. And so I just sat there for a second as I watched these beings literally become pillars of light and go into the sky. And then the others just kind of like wandered away. They weren't ready yet, which is fine. But I'm like, the fact that my pain and my nervous breakdown turned into this divine channeling code situation that allowed these beings to be untethered is insane to me. I'm like, wow, like I can't make this up. I thought I was just going to my car to cry and then I would just go back to my room and go to bed. Like, I am so blown away that that was a sequence. Like, that was a divinely guided sequence. I'm like, wow. So, what do you think?
That's hitting me in so many different ways because especially in our communities, like when you come across these kind of more scary, nefarious, cryptid entity characters, it's like, get the fuck away. You're scary. I'm divine. You can't touch me. Clear out all of this pain so that you're not going to touch me, you know? And yeah, it's kind of like almost like a warring. And I guess there is some need for that in some instances, but to see how your pain was actually like the beginning for a true transmutation for these other souls, and to actually not just send it away, but to help move it towards the light and lessen the density on Earth for all. Like, I don't know, it gives so much more. It gives so much more context and meaning to pain. And of course we know like we have to go through hard times to like become more resilient and strong, but in an even more concrete and immediate way, you know. Like, this is like a divine synchronicity, a divine orchestration for you to feel this, go out to the car, receive this message, and then like all of these tangential beings are then affected. That's like, wow. So let me just clarify my image of this scene a little bit. You're in your car and there's like 10 creatures, humans, entities, kind of all around you.
Basically, yeah, my car was in the driveway and it was on the right side. I have two garages. And then like trying to like paint the picture if you were to like see it from your perspective, like here's my car and then over here are like the crowd of humans and then over the fence over here were like the cryptids.
Mm-hmm. And from your perception, are you able to see these just like in your plain sight, like not even in your psychic vision, like they're just clear as day standing there, like, or are you more sensing them or feeling them? What is the visual? Yeah.
So my mediumship niche is intuitive based. I'm still working towards physically seeing things. The way that I physically experience things across the veil with the five senses is very inconsistent. Usually, those physical experiences happen in the half asleep, half awake, the hypnagogic state. But in this particular situation, to answer your question, oh, it might have. Cryptids are scary, dude. If I saw the cryptids
Yeah.
outside physically, that would that would
That
have
would
been
make it
so scary.
so much harder to maintain that peaceful state.
Yeah. And I tell myself that too. I'm like, you know what? Maybe my full HSP hasn't come in yet because I need to like practice stabilizing my internal state more because I see it. I see it with my mind's eye so clearly and it's still a
Mhm.
little creepy. So seeing it physically, oh, that would not be good.
I know. I know. It's such a double-edged sword. Like, as we've been working on these seeing abilities, like, I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I would love to have like clear as day sight. Like, I'm receiving these messages, but like the up level would be so cool, but also absolutely horrifying.
Literally. No, for
But also,
real.
could I even handle that? Yeah. It's so real. Like, if you actually have like this whole gang of creatures around you. Mm.
I
Do
know. Oh
you
my
do you
God.
remember what was flowing through you while you were giving that speech or the coding transmission?
So, like I said, with stuff like that, it's hard to put it into exact words, word for word. And I wouldn't be able to entirely recapture all of its essence unless I recorded it. And that was like an in the moment like
Yeah.
thing. So like there was no way. But it was like, if anything, it was the active transmutation with words of my own pain that was divinely orchestrated to be used for these other beings that happen to show up and like be attracted around me. That's my theory, because I was talking about hope and again resilience and like trust in the universe, and like you're never too far gone, like you can heal, I think. And I love that you brought that up about our community just a couple minutes ago, because I feel like once an entity gets to a very deeply malevolent state, I feel like those in our community might not even try to see through into what their true essence actually is, which is really sad. It's like, this is the most important thing I've learned in my mediumship journey. This thing. There's so much gunk and so much narrative that gets put onto people and entities. Like, that is not what they truly are, because guess what? We are all from source. No matter how much karma they have, no matter how much energy they've consumed in the past 1,000 years or whatever, like, we all have the same core. As much as maybe some people don't want to acknowledge that, or like, oh, you are separate from me, you are not me, I am divine and you are not. That is not true. There is just so much gunk on these things that have removed them so much from their true nature that we are simply closer to our true nature. So that is like a big thing that I have learned and realized through working with different mentors and expanding my horizons even more, with not only sharing their knowledge, but my own experiences. Like, I have seen this. I would be skeptical. I'd be like, I don't know. But I've actually seen this actually happen. So, oh, that was like a passionate. Okay. I'm like getting back to your original question. So yeah, if anything, it was me speaking out loud, voicing my own feelings and like the depths of the themes of what I was crying about, that got translated into a message of hope and resilience that then was a ripple effect to the energies around me.
It's so beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
And then you just go to bed.
Yeah, yep. I just
Move on.
isn't that so funny? It's like you have this like, oh no no, oh, and you're like a crazy like intense experience, and then you in your physical form, you're like, okay, and then you just like
I guess I'll go
keep
brush my
going.
teeth.
It is so like it's such a stark contrast. It's kind of hilarious.
Mhm. Wow. Was there another story that you had to share with us today?
Yeah, so I actually have two more, if
Oh
that is
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, so these two are from very recently. This one I'm about to talk about is from literally May 2nd, this past, month, couple weeks ago. And basically, I had a lot on my mind. I was door dashing. That's what I do for work for now until I, get into my fashion industry job, because I have a bachelor's in apparel merchandising. And so I was thinking about full spectrum integration, which, to those of you who might not know what that means, it's like fully holding space without shame or fear for shadows, for trauma, for those things that we might want to push away, and recoil from. Because holding space for them, rather than trying to other it from ourselves, like, oh, I'm divine, this is not divine, like, the key is, in my opinion, to actually hold space for it without fear, because if we are divine beings, then it'll be released, it'll be transmuted. The more that you push it down, the stronger it'll become, because it's coming up for a reason in your journey. So full spectrum integration means that all parts of yourself, the very divine, like, ooh, I love this parts, all the way down to like the, ooh, this is very human and primal and yucky and I don't like it. Like, all of that is sort of like held together in this beautiful essence that is you, and is fully seen and heard and loved equally. And that is very hard to do, but it's very important work. And so this day I was thinking about full spectrum integration, not being ashamed of what's been coming up for me shadow work wise, healing karmic attachments. That's some work that I've been doing recently, as well as divine union. And then I was literally pulling into this parking lot to pick up an order that I needed to deliver to a customer. And I can't make this up. I saw smoking at the base of a bush in this parking lot. And it was smoking a lot. And it wasn't windy either. It was humid that day. It was 70 degrees. And no, sorry, it was windy. So I was like, wait, how is this? What is smoking? What's causing the smoking? It's really windy. So like, how is it even like catching? Like, I don't understand. And so as I was trying to park my car in this parking lot, I keep looking at it because it was smoking a lot and I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, what if that catches on fire? And it did. And I'm like, oh my God, this bush is on fire. And so I parked, I got my water bottle out. And what's so interesting is that there were some like police officers that were taking a lunch break at this place. And so more of them were coming to join their buddies in the parking lot right as I was standing by the site with my water bottle. And so I kind of like flagged them down, like, what the hell? And I like pointed to the fire and they came out and we like all sort of like put our water bottles like into this flame that started. And they looked at me so confused. They're like, how did this happen? And I said, I don't know. I just got here. And they said, well, good catch. Like, thank you for catching this. And I'm like, what? And that's not even the craziest part, Passion. That's not even the craziest part because I went in to get my order. I came back out. The site was smoking again. We put water on it. And it was still smoking. There was nothing there. I looked, there were no cigarette butts. There was like, it was just twigs. Like there was nothing to like create this thing. I'm like, what? So if we look at history, if we look at biblical stuff, the burning bush appears in the book of Exodus. And Moses saw that through, the bush was on fire, but it didn't burn. That's something I noticed too with this, is that there was the fire, but it didn't seem like there was any damage, which is like so weird. But the thing that the burning bush was meant to represent is, God's miracles, God, gathering a divine. But the part that stands out to me the most is this quote that I found online of like, the wisdom in the world contradicts the wisdom of God. And to me, I interpret that as what our mentor has told us in the past of general society only sees half the picture. They see the logic, they see what can be proven physically and like just stuck in limitation and trying to boil down existence to what can be physically tangible. But that is not all that existence is, as we know. And so me seeing this literal burning bush while thinking about full spectrum integration and properly holding space for all these themes that were coming up for me without fear is like, we are divinely guided, and everything that moves through us to work on isn't going to make us suffer for longer. It's not going to ruin our work or our energy. It's not subjecting us to attack, like all of that stuff that maybe we've heard in other circles at times. It is all divine. And I'm like, wow. So, I'm like, wow, seriously, a burning bush? Seriously? Like, I actually saw that. Oh, wow. And other people too. It's not just me. Like, the police officers were there. They're like, what the heck? Like, I shared this experience with other people.
Whoa. Yeah, that's downright biblical. That's so fucking powerful. Wow. So I'm just thinking about what that quote was saying. The wisdom of earth contradicts the wisdom of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning to say also like, you can't even, you're so stuck in the logical, rational science of it all that like you can't even see how these things can like do contradict physics, you know, like there is magic happening beyond what our understanding of like the limits of physical possibilities are.
Yes.
Mm, yeah, and I've seen that. I mean, I've never seen a burning bush, but I've seen a lot of things like that in my life. And that one is just so big. Wow. And then you get the food and you take it to the person and you maybe get a tip and you go on with your day.
So funny. Just like with the accidental group ascension thing. Yep, just go to bed. And then in this case, yep, deliver the food. Like what? Like, oh my God. The paradox of existence.
I know. And like, just to add another couple of cents here, I think it's so incredible how sometimes like the biggest, like most like not monumental, but like the things that are like huge and going to precipitate change or like just be a chapter or something in your life, like could be small too. Like that to the policeman could just be like some smoke and be like, that's kind of weird, you know? Or like I even noticed like with tarot, for example, I'll get like some sequence of cards and be like, oh, like this card with like the coins or like indicating like abundance or like a mentor or something comes in and I'm like imagining these like really huge like mass hordes of wealth or like the most significant person in my life coming in and like thinking of all this like really big life-changing stuff happening, but actually like it's oftentimes really small but still really like hugely significant.
Mhm.
Like the ways that these things show up are kind of like you seek it and then you put in the meaning and then you make it like the big thing, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm. I think that's what is really enriching about the spiritual journey, being able to like apply meaning and transformation to so many little things, as well as crazy big things like seeing a bush burning and not actually burning in front of your eyes.
I know it's funny how that works, right? It's
Mhm.
all so intentionally for us, the big stuff and the small stuff.
Mhm. Okay, take me home. What's our last story for today?
Yes. So this one happened, I think, yeah, June 5th. So this was very recent. This was when I took a little retreat out into nature at a place that was like a 2-hour drive from me in America. It was a tiny house on a rural land. And I took pictures. I'll make a post about it later. But basically, I mean, full transparency, mentally, I've been up and down. Energetically, I've been up and down. And I needed to get away. And so I remember making this drive, listening to all of my kind of like witchy bohemian music, just like seeing the rural land around me. And once I actually got there, there was an outdoor shower. There were all these flowers and gardens and like trees. And it was so amazing. And so the first night I was there, I like to make audio recordings, like diary audio recordings, because it's just easier to just speak freely rather than writing. And so I made a diary entry and I was talking about my anxieties, some of the things that I left behind at home, and specifically something that I'm going to do, which I haven't told you yet about Passion, and I haven't told everybody yet either, but I will, is I'm going to go to live with my aunt and uncle for a couple months in a place more south of where I live. That's also where my new mentor is, so I can see him in person. And I'm going to be there for a couple months because I've been spending so much time and energy trying to regulate myself to the point where I am not getting like I'm not able to put forth the energy to like progress my life in sense of career and things like that, which is really sad and frustrating and concerning. It's like I know what I'm capable of, I know what I'm here to create, and the fact that it feels as though like the environment and like just the stuff around me is so intense that I have to spend all of that time trying to be okay. It's a survival mode. I'm not able to grow here. And so I'm going to be going, to connect with some people professionally in this place, and also come back to myself because I very desperately need it. And so I remember I was like talking into the recording, talking about all of this. And what's hard is that it's obviously like it's going to cost money. I'm going to need to drive all the way down there. It's a 17-hour drive. And that is like gas money and also a hotel cost because I can't drive the whole way through because of my disability, and like all these like factors are in play. And then once I get there, it's going to be an adjustment period, but I'm still going to work DoorDash while I'm there, which is nice to have that job because not only can I make my own schedule, I can do it anywhere, which is like so good, important. And so I was like, oh, this might be a little risky, right? Like this is going to be expensive and like all these 3D type of labels on this situation. And so speaking into my recording, I was kind of asking the universe, I'm like, is this decision enough? Is this quantum leap enough? What if I get there and nothing happens? Like I was so scared and like nervous. And what's so amazing is that at that moment, I saw a firefly land on my window, like outside, like on the little like hinge or whatever. And it was very inconsistently flickering. To me, one of my major signs from one of my most significant guides is like a flashing street lamp. And so I'm like, oh, this is so interesting that I'm seeing a flickering firefly out in the middle of nowhere, because that's like the natural version of a flickering street lamp to me. And so as soon as I vocalized that out loud, as soon as I did, the flickering got brighter. I'm not kidding. It got so bright when I vocalized that and recognized that. And from there, a transmission came in very, very clearly, and I was speaking it into my recording. One of the few transmissions I've gotten word for word recorded.
Oh
But
yeah.
basically, it was very brief. It was very effective and to the point. And it basically said, it is enough. Like, this leap is enough. You will be taken care of. You will not fall. This is the right decision, basically. And I sat there taking it in, and the amount of beautiful support and comfort and love that came from that. And I thought to myself, well, why didn't I receive this sooner? And clear as day, intuitively, the divine literally said, it was too loud. And to me, I interpreted that as, the energy around me while I'm, living at home. And I'm like, it was too loud. Seriously? Like, so the fact that I was able to get away out in nature just with myself and what was around me, and I received that message, was so affirming and so amazing. And besides that, I've had experiences with like colors showing up, numbers, animals in my environment consistently to like reassure me and help guide me. And I've had some cool little experiences with pagan deities over the years too, but those are all of my, huge stories.
It's so wild how stuck you can feel in a situation that is not good, but it's too loud and consuming to be able to, yeah, get yourself out of it for like at least a while until you reach a breaking point or something like that. But like I've I'm a big proponent of upping and leaving. Getting yourself in a situation where you can see things freshly, and it's like as soon as you're in this new environment and new perspective, you're like, oh, of course, like, of course, like why was it so hard for me to get to this point, or why was it I was so resistant to doing this thing that's like made my life so much better.
Literally.
But it's so real, yeah. Oh my God, I think that's a huge choice and a really, really good move for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so brave.
Thank you. It's really hard, but I'm really excited.
No, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. I feel so touched to have you share all these stories with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for facilitating this space. It was so nice to connect.
Yeah. Okay. Let's sign off.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy talking with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're such an inspiration. Your experiences are like really, really touching for me to hear, and I think really inspiring for everybody who's listening to hear too.
Thank you so much.